On. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to 1025 in Conversation. I'm Jordan along with Grace, and this is our final installment in our horror movie trilogy that we've been covering so far. The first episode we did was on The Haunting. The second episode we did was on The Shining. And today, to wrap it all up, we are going to be taking a look at the 1991 psychological thriller, The Silence of the Lamb. Now, The Silence of the Lamb was directed by Jonathan Demme. It starred Jodie Foster and Sir Anthony Hopkins in the roles of Clarice Starling and Dr. Hannibal Lecter. And it says here, the synopsis is Jodie Foster stars as Clarice Starling, a top student at the FBI's training academy. Jack Crawford, played by Scott Glenn, wants Clarice to interview Dr. Hannibal Lecter, played by Sir Anthony Hopkins, a brilliant psychologist who is also a violent psychopath serving life behind bars for various acts of murder and cannibalism. Crawford believes that Lecter may have insight into a case and that Sterling, as an attractive young woman, may be just the bait to draw him out. Now, this was my first time ever watching this film, The Silence of the Lamb. I've heard so many things about it. Like, my mom told me, Jordan, The Silence of the Lamb is a phenomenal movie. And I was like, okay, I took her word for it. And throughout this class, I was very interested to see how these other horror films sort of influenced each other, and then how this film is vastly different from everything else. Because this film, I consider this more of like an artful horror film, something like on the lines of Rosemary's Baby, The Shining, and all of that. Today, we're going to separate this up into about 6 categories. The first one is being the overall introduction to Dr. Hannibal Lecter, the use of color, the lighting in this film, the cinematography, the performances and the characters, the treatment of women in this film, as we kind of talked about that yesterday in class, and the overall legacy of this film. Now, Grace, I want to ask you, since you are more well-versed in the Silence of the Lamb world, and this is I believe your second time watching it, and my first time watching it, overall, what were your thoughts on this film?
I have always loved this movie. I think I first watched it when I was like 15 or 16, which watching it again today, I was like, okay, there's some like things that I definitely missed. Like there was a lot of stuff that happened when she first meets Hannibal in the prison that just went very much over my head. Like the whole thing with the character Miggs, I think he was called, over my head. So there's a lot of nuance to the film, and I think it's one of those movies that you benefit from multiple watches. And I've even watched, like, when I was in high school, I watched the Hannibal like TV series for a season. And it was just it's all so interesting, but you're never going to be as good as that original Silence of the Lambs, Anthony Hopkins, Hannibal. It's just too iconic, too good of a performance.
Yeah. That happens with a lot of films that are based off of like a beloved horror film, because like even, and I know I'm still as shocked at how much I love this movie, even the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, it's like that original film is so iconic and so impactful. The other sequels weren't able to kind of capture that same sort of magic, and we'll get to the sequels later on in like the final half of this discussion. But I've heard so much about it, like I mentioned. And when Professor Mock assigned this to us, I was like, okay, I was very interested, because I was like, okay, let's see what this is, about. Because we've seen throughout this class horror films in the fantastical realm, like Nightmare on Elm Street, even to an extent Scream, and Us and all that type of stuff, and even Get Out as we move forward. And then we have those that take a more psychological approach, like The Shining, The Haunting, even to an extent, I even want to say like I Walk with a Zombie, basically.
Oh, for sure.
Now, let's sort of get on to the introduction of our in my opinion, the standout of this film, and that is the introduction of Dr. Hannibal Lecter, played excellently by Sir Anthony Hopkins. Now, one of the trivias, as I usually have on IMDb, is that it says right here, in preparation for this role, Sir Anthony Hopkins studied files of serial killers. Also, he visited prisoners and studied convicted murderers, and was present during some court hearings concerning the very grueling murders and the serial killings. And he also said, it also states right here that this film was sort of a last-ditch effort for Anthony Hopkins to break into the film industry. You know, he did work here and there, but this was the film that really catapulted him into superstardom, basically.
Yep.
One of the things I really dug about this introduction is how he's mentioned throughout the majority of the scenes leading up to when Clarice meets him. You know, he's described as a monster. You know, he bit a woman's nose off. He's horrible. He's the scariest inmate in this prison, right? And then leading up to it, we see these two other prisoners. I think it's three other prisoners actually, who are even crazier. So I'm thinking to myself, oh my God, if these guys are crazy, then what's this guy going to be like? And then when the camera moves towards his cell, you just see this kind old man just standing in the middle of the room saying like, you know, good morning and all that type of stuff. And it's chilling because it's like, oh my God, what is this guy capable of, you know?
Right. And I even read Ted Talley, the screenwriter. He said in an interview that Anthony Hopkins, he trained himself to keep his eyes open and to not blink for this role because he wanted the details down to like when Hannibal blinks, he only blinks once and it's really slow as Clarice is telling him about the lambs and the slaughtering. He wanted it to be so like inhuman almost because we blink so unconsciously. So, and just like I had never noticed that until but it's details like that and his performance that add to that overall like eeriness and like almost inhumanness. But like you said, like you're expecting him to be this monster, like just so lethal. And he is, but he's also very composed and even a little charming.
Yeah. And one of the things that I actually found out a few days ago, I was watching an interview that I almost said Jodie Comer from Killing Eve, that Jodie Foster did. That Jodie Foster did on the Graham Norton show. And she said, like, during that production, she didn't even speak to Anthony Hopkins. Like, she was so scared by him. It's like, oh my God, you know?
That's interesting.
But like you said, like, even though this character is a psychopath, even though he is a murderous, like, bloodthirsty psychopath, he is very charming. He is very like calm, you know what I mean? He has this very like, this is gonna sound absolutely crazy, but it was like I would probably go and sit down and have a beer with him maybe and talk about the philosophical aspects of life, you know, like one does.
He's clearly very, very brilliant. Like that comes through, and he's so perceptive. Like it's so like he just reads Clarice like instantly that first interaction, and it makes you wonder like, oh my God, like what would he see in me? Kind of like he's like a unique kind of psychiatrist where he just has that perception. And I think it's even interesting how he's still regarded as Dr. Lecter even by like the prison guards. Like there's that, it's like people recognize just the brilliance of this man.
Yeah. And speaking of the brilliance, it was like even the scene when they first meet, right? And Clarice
Mm-hmm.
has her little ID badge and he's moving
You're
closer,
holding up
right?
your ID.
He was
Yes.
like, he was like, that expires in a week. You're not really an FBI agent, are you? And I'm like, oh my God. Like,
Yes.
that's
Okay, first of
insane.
all, okay, Hannibal impression.
Right.
But no, it was so, and, like, then he, like, smells, like, and he's like, "Oh, you're wearing such and such lotion." And I'm like,
I think he says something like, yo, you're wearing Dior cologne or something like that. And like something, I'm like, how do
"Yes."
you know? Like,
I'm like, how do you know that? And that to me gave me, like, that creepy, like, cannibal feeling. I'm like, "Do you know that because you eat people, and so, like, you're very familiar with the smells of humans?" And it's it's eerie and weirdly charming. And, like, I
yeah,
don't know how to, like, make sense of those 2 things, but it is, it's just the way he plays it.
yeah. And also, I really dig the very descriptive aspect of Hannibal Lecter because the fact
Mhm,
that we only see him really have his cannibalistic tendencies one time in the film when he bites the police officer, but
mhm.
it's mainly the descriptions of his killings. Like the one time, and I'm gonna put on my Anthony Hopkins impression. He's like, I ate his liver with some fava beans and a nice Chianti, and then he does this. I was like, oh,
Yeah,
what? I was like, oh my
right?
God. Like,
Like, and
chill
they
out,
never,
Odin.
I know, and they never say, like, an exact, like, kill count, but you just have this feeling, I'm like, "Oh my god, this dude has eaten hundreds of people." Like,
I know.
that's the vibe that it gives off. And speaking of his one cannibal, like, moment, that scene is, I don't know if you wanted to talk about it later, but that scene is one of just my favorites in the whole
Chef's
thing. Like,
kiss.
that elevator ruse with the whole ambulance, I
Yeah,
just fell over. I was so shocked.
yeah. I just
Mhm.
love it was incredible, you know. And
Yeah.
even because the whole time I was watching this movie and the
Mhm.
fact that Hannibal Lecter was a cannibal, I was thinking about the family from Texas Chainsaw. I was like,
Uh-huh.
imagine if you put Hannibal Lecter in a room with these idiots, basically.
Oh god.
He would
He
he
would,
would mentally just pick them to pieces.
oh, yeah.
Like,
I think he would honestly mess with them just for his own entertainment. Like, he would read them to filth. Like, it would just be so funny. I would love to see it.
right, like the
Um,
food that they were eating, and then he'll
mhm.
probably look at that and discuss like, I ate better food like this in prison. Like,
It's like, you don't have your fava beans with that, you know?
or your Chianti.
Yes.
Right.
No, and then another thing is, like, just that one, like, the way he escapes, I think that shows such a good coupling of how brilliant he is, but also how, I don't wanna say deranged, that's not the right word, because he's so controlled. Just genuinely, he is a genuine psychopath, but he's
Yeah.
also brilliant, and it's like he uses that brilliance to do these horrific things, and, like, that's why he can outsmart the freaking FBI. Like, it's crazy.
Right. And another thing that I found out about, and
Mhm.
then we're gonna move on to our second
Yeah.
topic, is the fact that he doesn't yell throughout this film. One of the things I realized, because even when we look at Buffalo Bill, and we'll get to him in a minute, he
Mhm.
yells constantly.
He does.
You know, Dr. Lecter, he doesn't yell because it's like, if you're important, if you're too important, why do you have to raise your voice? Basically,
Mhm.
you know, when you are that respected, you don't have to yell. You don't have to
Mhm.
raise your voice. You already captivate somebody. Like he captivated Clarice throughout the film. And
Mhm.
I just loved their relationship throughout the movie. I'm
I
not gonna lie,
know.
it was actually kind of like sweet a little bit. I was like, oh man.
It was because you really get that sense that, like, Clarice is divulging these things to him that story, I'm sure she's never told anyone else that, and even when he calls her in the end and he was like, "I do hope the lambs have stopped screaming for you," and you know,
Yeah,
like, I'm like, "Oh, it's kinda sweet though." Like,
it
you know?
is.
It's like, "I hope you're okay. I'm not gonna come after you. I respect you too much for that," and it's it's so demented the way you just, like, get so into these characters that you're, like, rooting for a literal psychopath.
A literal murderer. Yeah.
Literal murderer, yep.
Yeah. Now, moving on, we're going to take a look at the use of color. Now, you
Yes.
know, color means everything in a film. A
Mhm.
simple color can have a whole nother meaning to it. The three colors that I found out that I saw throughout this film were red, blue, and white. Of course, that's the colors of the American flag. Now, of course, red,
Mhm.
like I mentioned in The Shining, that symbolizes danger and
Mhm.
power, but it
Yes.
also symbolizes valor. It symbolizes a sense of importance to you. It symbolizes a sense of passion. I saw this color red many times, but most specifically when Clarice actually enters the prison and she's about to meet Hannibal Lecter. There's this red light that shines when she's talking to the guard and
Mhm.
he's saying, you know, Clarice, are you really sure you want to do this? He is the deadliest of all of our inmates and all that stuff. It gives off a sense of dread that literally
Mhm.
makes you like uneasy when you watch it. And then
Yes.
another use of red, of course, blood, that makes sense.
Yeah.
But another one is if you look closely before she actually enters into the hall of cells to meet Hannibal Lecter, there was a red gate that follows that was there,
Oh,
you know.
yeah. Mhm. That's a good
And
catch.
I also think that that red gate not only symbolizes the danger that she is in, but also the fact that Hannibal Lecter has power in this facility. You know,
Mhm.
I also found it really cool that Clarice is actually wearing green as well, because green and red are complementary colors, basically
Mhm.
complement
Yeah.
each other. Right. Now, blue is usually, symbolizes, I believe when I mentioned this in The Shining, it symbolized isolation. So that when
Yeah.
Wendy and Danny were playing in the snow, it was mainly blue during that.
Right.
But it also symbolizes justice, preservation, and authority.
Mhm.
Now, now you might be wondering, okay, Jordan, where was blue? It was on Hannibal Lecter's jumpsuit. And to me, that
That's a good catch.
symbolizes to me that symbolizes his authority in the whole situation. Even though
Mhm.
Clarice is the one who is conducting the interview, technically Hannibal Lecter is in control of this situation. And we see
Oh,
throughout this
absolutely.
film, you caught it too, right?
Mhm.
And we
Yeah.
see throughout this film that he basically is in control anytime Clarice is present, right? And next is white. Now, white in on the American flag, the white represents purity and innocence, right? The
Mhm.
biggest one was Buffalo Bill's dog, Precious, which, by the way, that dog was so freaking adorable. I
I
was like, oh my
know.
God, like, I
I
want one of those.
I know. I like to think that Catherine kept Precious
She
after all
did.
of that. It's her consolation.
I actually think when Catherine was walking out, I think she actually was holding
She
Precious. So
was, yeah.
so yeah.
Yes.
so yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
I love
So
Precious.
I know that freaking dog was adorable. That's the one dog in all of the films that I actually would like keep, because like People Under the Stairs and what was that other one? The other one with the dog, the
Oh,
Rottweiler. Oh God,
what was that? The
what was
Omen?
that? I think it was, yeah, The Omen,
Yeah.
and
Yep.
a few more. I was, oh God, but Precious is goated.
Yes.
But yeah, Grace, what were your thoughts personally on like the use of color in this film and the three colors that I mentioned?
Uh, First of all, props to you for noticing like the blue jumpsuit and like the red door, because my eyes miss things like that. But I love what you said about how the main colors are red, white, and blue, because there's just a sense that serial killers are a primarily American thing. Now, I know they're not, but it is statistical that almost 70% of all serial killers in the world are American. So that's a fun fact. So it does, um, so there's that. And then what I was actually thinking of was like the use of like light versus darkness in the film too. Like that iconic ending scene when Buffalo Bill like cuts the lights off and she's just grabbing around in the dark, and you can just
Yes.
see the physical terror. Like her hands are shaking, her breathing is so heavy, and it's like as soon as he's dead, the lights come back on. And I was trying to figure out like, well, no one like turned a light switch on. Like, where did the light come from? And I'm like, it almost felt symbolic to me that like him being gone has taken some darkness like out of the world. And
Yeah.
but in contrast, like it's so bright and vibrant where Hannibal is in the end. So it was just it was very interesting. And it definitely starts with like back when she was like training, like the sky's kind of overcast. And I feel like it does move towards the end where like it is brighter in the end. So I didn't notice per se colors, but I noticed like light and darkness.
Yeah. And that actually is our next topic, lighting.
Oh,
But yeah,
well.
that whole you basically got it down pat. But
Yep.
yeah, that whole night vision scene with him, he's
Yes.
literally in front of her. And watching it, I am like, oh my God, just turn. Like,
Mhm.
a part of me just wanted to say turn around, but it's like
Yes.
pitch black. Where am I gonna, where am I gonna go?
And
Yeah,
it also shows like the selfishness of Buffalo Bill, and that he's not very well calculated, because Hannibal would have used that to his advantage in a different way versus Buffalo Bill. He's just like being creepy and like kind of like following her, like almost
right,
like seeing how long he can get away with it, but he's not
right,
actually using it to his advantage.
right. It's like, I want you to come to me, basically. You know what I mean? I
Yeah.
want you to find me, basically.
Yes.
And that
Um,
color actually was green. That color was green. So
yes, it was. Yeah.
color, man, color is important.
Color is important. I will say, like the yellow that's used in like the very iconic poster where it's just Jodie Foster with the yellow moth, like, and then you see these like brown and yellow moths. They even pull like the one out of the dead body, which is so gross.
Yuck. Yes.
But that's like another like, I don't know, that really like earthy, like almost like deathly looking color, I think features a good deal too.
Yeah. Now, since you already established great analysis on the lighting, let's just move on to lighting real quick. Now,
Yeah.
when it comes to the lighting in this film, It looks like it used a lot of natural lighting to show a lot of the purity maybe in American society. Oh, and also going back to color, I also think that the reason why they use red, white, and blue, I also think is kind of to portray like the downfall of American society, maybe. The fact that
Yeah.
these three main colors are attributed to a serial killer, a guy who dances with that was so messed up. That whole dance
The
Buffalo
dance.
Bill did.
Oh my gosh. I
We
read
might
that
talk about
too,
that
but
in a few.
yeah, we can revisit it, but just as like a fun fact, no one on set that day, like it wasn't scripted, that dance. No one knew what he was going to do. And like the tucking, that was all, I can't think of the actor's name, but that was all him. And
Improv.
no
Wow.
one knew what he was going to do. And they were just shocked. So
Wow. That's
that was a bold choice, you know.
that was insanely bold. But yeah.
Mhm.
So going back to lighting, it
Mhm.
definitely used a lot of natural lighting throughout the film. But usually I think with the close-ups, especially definitely with Hannibal Lecter's face when he's in that
Mhm.
cage cell with like the table, the books, and all that type
Mhm.
of stuff.
Mhm.
It used a lot of low-key lighting to create this feel of intimidation and tension.
Mhm.
And also in Buffalo Bill's lair, basically, where the little fountain thing that Catherine was hiding in. It was no
Mhm.
lights basically. And then
No.
when Buffalo Bill and Precious, come in, that's when the light is very like cast onto them, kind of giving this very
Mhm.
a little bit kind of angelic type of feel, maybe, but
Yeah.
also a demonic feel as well. Even even when the officer storm into Hannibal Lecter's cell and he sees the light with the dead body hanging on it, that kind of has like that very angelic vibe of this soul
Yeah.
being sent to heaven, basically.
Yeah, like a twisted version of an angel, which is like a motif that I've seen like in other TV shows and like movies and stuff, but I think this is like the first one that like really famously did it. But that's just it's so disturbing. And again, it's like he's so brilliant but so brutal. Like when you see that
Yes.
guy's body. And another thing, since you mentioned the close-ups, the lighting during the close-ups, they do it in such a way where like Clarice, her face like doesn't have shadows on it. But I noticed that like there's shadows being cast on Hannibal's face, which
Yeah.
plays into that, innocent, Clarice is like innocent and pure light. And then he is obviously the opposite of all of that.
Yeah. And I actually found out on IMDb trivia that Sir
Mm-hmm.
Anthony Hopkins and Jodie Foster, they only shared 4 scenes throughout the course of that film, throughout the course of this
Mm-hmm.
entire movie. Only 4 scenes, and just made it even more impactful too. So
Yeah.
really like, let's see. Since we blew through lighting, let's go on to cinematography. Now,
Yeah,
the cinematography in The Silence of the Lamb, I think, is phenomenal. And
for
it's
sure.
mainly due to the use of the camera and Clarice's perspective throughout the film.
Mm-hmm.
Like I mentioned yesterday in class, there's the shot where they're observing the dead body, right? And when Clarice says, "All right, guys, it's time for you guys to go and get out," and of course, all the guys are looking at her like, "Who are you talking to?"
Mm-hmm.
The camera is positioned to be lower than everyone else, since
Yep.
Clarice is much shorter than
She's
everybody.
short. Mm-hmm.
And even when we saw this in the beginning, when she was going to Mr. Crawford's office, we see that everyone else in that elevator is tall. Meanwhile, Jodie
Mm-hmm.
Foster is very short. I really dug that. The use of the camera during the Buffalo Bill night vision scene, very, very compelling. The first
Mm-hmm.
person perspective that was seen,
Yes.
I thought that was done very well.
Yes.
let's see. The isolation also between Hannibal Lecter and Clarice. Most specifically, I believe the scene where it was all dark, and then all you can see is Hannibal's like arms and his legs, but you see like a close up of Anthony Hopkins' face, and they're talking about like the screaming lambs, Clarice's dad who passed away. All of that just had this. It's dread, but it's very calm and relaxing. I don't know. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, so I noticed like the heavy usage of close-ups primarily between like Clarice and Hannibal, and it was like in that scene you mentioned, he's you rarely see like his whole body, but you always see his face. Like you always see that just I don't know how else to explain it, but just that Hannibal expression. Like it's very unique and unsettling, but also kind of comforting in like that really weird way. Um, and it shows to me like there's an intimacy between them because almost all of it doesn't use like a traditional like over the shoulder shot, or it doesn't use like a long shot where you can see like their bodies. It's like these tight up shots of their faces so that you can see like their expression, and almost like just it's like just the two of them. Like I don't know, it really evokes this sense of intimacy. um and then yeah, the Buffalo Bill shot that you mentioned, with the like night vision, that's unsettling because it forces you like you're seeing Clarice through his perspective, and
Yeah,
it's so creepy because not a lot of films put you in like the killer's POV. Um,
yeah,
so I think that's very effective, and just I don't know, just the overall use of I don't know film language as well, but I don't know, there isn't a lot of like the camera really doesn't leave Jodie Foster very often.
yeah,
And like the scene where they're looking at the body, instead of showing this grotesque body that they're describing and that she's looking at, the camera's mostly on her and you're watching her reaction to it. And it's like choices like that, I think, is like why people just love her so much. Like you can't help
yeah,
but empathize with her.
yeah. You almost feel like you're a part of her conscience in a way. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean?
Yeah,
Like
it's a great
it
way to
feels
put
like
it.
while watching this movie, I just felt like I was her as well. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean?
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, Clarice is wow. And you know what? Even the director said that, which we're gonna go on to the characters in a minute, in a few
Yeah,
seconds, but the director
absolutely.
Jonathan Demme, he was convinced that Jodie Foster was perfect for Clarice Starling when
Mm-hmm.
he saw her and purposely walk down the corridor to meet him. He just liked that determination about her, and that's one of the things I loved about
Mm-hmm.
this character. She's just so determined to just save the day and not run away and all that type of stuff like the final
Yeah.
girls have done. You know what I mean? But yeah.
Yeah.
Now moving on to the performances and the characters, I
Yeah.
think that this film has, in my opinion, some of the best performances I have seen in my entire life. In my
Absolutely.
like I joked yesterday, in my 21 years of existence,
Yes.
incredible. Jodie Foster as Clarice Starling.
Mm-hmm.
I can honestly say that Clarice Starling is easily one of my favorite characters in film.
Mm-hmm.
The determination, the drive that she has, the fact
Mm-hmm.
that she doesn't want to give up, basically, like all of that I just loved about her. The fact that We
Yes.
sympathize with her when she's telling Dr. Lecter about her childhood, the fact that her mom and dad passed away when she was like 10 years old. It was like you just feel sorry for her, in the majority of the horror films that we've seen, like even with The Haunting with Nell and with The Shining with Wendy, we always are wondering, okay, why should I care about these characters? And even in the class in general, like with Texas Chainsaw, with Candyman, why should we care about these characters?
Right.
And many of them you can definitely care about them. Wendy, definitely. The idea of a
Testing. Talking. Me. Okay. I cannot hear you. I don't know why.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can.
Perfect.
Okay. Sorry about that. I have no idea what happened.
You're good. That's West Georgia's Wi-Fi, not you. West Georgia's Wi-Fi.
Shout out to UWG.
Exactly. Jordan Walton with the tech wizard.
Yes. So I missed some of that. I heard you were talking about Clarice and how a lot of the class movies and stuff we've watched, like, why should we care? And some of them definitely do make you care. And then that was about where.
Yeah, I got you. I'll just run it back again. Okay.
Right.
So no, you're good. Throughout this class, even I was wondering, because even when I watched Texas Chainsaw with Sally, when I was watching Candyman with Helen, even the
Blair
Haunting
Witch Project.
I'm gonna try not to go on a rant real quick, but listen, even with the Blair Witch Project, right? Grace, when I was watching the Blair Witch Project, I was wondering, why should I care about these characters? Exactly. Why should I?
Exactly.
Literally.
And that's for me, that's one of the things that takes me out of a movie so quickly is when I can't care about what happens to the characters. I'm like, okay, but like, do I care about you? No.
Listen,
I've had that problem a lot, so I feel your pain.
I'm telling you, Grace, it is hard to like a movie when you do not like the characters. And the characters, listen, I don't hate Blair Witch Project. I'm going to say it right now. I don't hate Blair Witch Project. I just hate the characters. But
I understand that. That's my problem with Texas Chainsaw. I didn't like the characters.
Yeah, I didn't really care about Sally and all of them. I only cared about Jonathan, really, her brother, the paraplegic. Yeah. But no, not Jonathan. Franklin, that was his name.
Yeah, I knew who you meant.
Wrong character. But Clarice definitely is somebody that I care about, that I cared for in this film. To an extent, even Hannibal Lecter to an extent. And
that's the thing. It's like you're kind of rooting for Hannibal to get away. And it creates this unsettling feeling as a viewer because it's like, where are my morals at? But I mean, like, I don't know if you've ever seen Dexter, but it does the same thing. It makes you extremely sympathetic with a literal serial killer. So, but I think this is one of the first movies I can think of that like really like started that trend where it just makes you feel for the quote unquote like villain. But yeah, undoubtedly, you're rooting for Clarice and even Catherine. And I love that the two women in this movie, they are surrounded by all of these men, but at the same time, and even like the senator, like these women are not taking crap from anyone. And even like Catherine, like she's a victim, but she's fighting against it with literally everything that she can. Um,
Yes.
and like what she did, like luring Precious, love Precious, but that was so smart, you know?
Yes.
And it's just, she's not your typical victim the same way that Clarice is not your typical cop.
Yeah. I will have to say though, when she was trying to
Mm-hmm.
get the bone to Laura Precious, I was
Oh,
thinking to
yeah.
myself, wait a minute. If you're gonna get this small dog to bite this bone so you can climb up, how is that gonna work? I was thinking of that. I was like,
I don't know if that was the objective. I think the objective was to get Precious into the well as leverage.
that
That was
makes
kind of
more
what I
sense.
thought. Because I don't think, yeah, no, that dog weighs like 10 pounds at the most. I don't think that
That
that would
makes
have. Well, good Lord. It's
that
okay.
makes more sense because I was thinking, wait a minute. How are you gonna climb up a well with this small dog that weighs like five
Oh my
pounds
gosh.
fighting a bone?
No,
Oh
no.
man.
Oh, that is so funny. But you're like, especially after she sees those like bloody like fingernail marks, you do go
Yes.
like, I would try anything.
Yes.
Even even if that was what she was like meaning to do, I'm like, does it make logical sense? Or like, does it defy physics? Yeah, but I'm still gonna try. I would rather that than be skinned, you
Yeah.
know? So,
Yes. Oh my God.
and
Yes.
I would love to talk more about Buffalo Bill because I think it's interesting because we were talking in class about how this movie was offensive and protested by a lot of the LGBTQ plus community. And when I watched it again, I'm like, I don't know. I'm obviously not transgender, so I don't know how much I can speak to this. But to
Yeah.
me, Hannibal explains that he has this really bad psyche, like, or like pathology where like he just hates his identity. So he's desperately trying to change his identity in any way he can. And so he thinks that becoming a woman is the way to do that, but he's not actually transgender. And I think that's
Yeah.
a really important distinction. And I feel like maybe a lot of people who are protesting it just heard like some like abbreviated version, like, oh, the serial killer is transgender, and then they were mad. So
Yeah.
I don't know. What are your thoughts on like that whole like controversy and then just Buffalo Bill in general?
I never thought of it like that, but it was
Mm-hmm.
actually that's actually very interesting. The fact that he kind of hates his sexuality, so he's trying to do these
Mm-hmm.
things to try to change who he is, like the
Right.
dance. You know what I mean? Talking and all that
Yeah.
stuff. Even when he skins the women, I'm thinking to myself because while I was watching it, I was thinking to myself, why is he doing that? Why is he
Mm-hmm.
doing that? Maybe he is trying to create his version, a version of himself, basically.
Yeah.
I did some research a few days ago in preparation for this. There was a serial killer. Let me try to look up this guy's name really quickly. I
Is
think
it
his name
Ed
it's
Gein?
kind not Ed Gein, but it's
Okay.
another guy. I think it's about doll. Here it is. Okay, his name is Anatoly Moskovin. He's a former Russian linguistic, right? And what he used to do, I think he's like locked up in prison or even dead, I think. No, he's still alive, basically. What he used to do is he used to kill women and then he would turn them into dolls, basically. Like he would stuff them. He would stuff them and turn them into these mummified looking dolls and stuff like that. It sounds like something in a Batman comic, basically, about like a serial killer who does that stuff. Even like the smell that illuminate is like disgusting, but that reminded me of Buffalo Bill in a way. The fact that maybe he's killing all of the, and I'm not trying to justify what this dude did. This dude is a psychopath. But
no, but it's interesting to consider for sure.
It's very interesting. It's the fact that he's trying to create his perfect version of a woman, basically. And the treatment of women throughout this film is very, very interesting. But to answer your question around the protesting, I feel like the people who were protesting this film didn't really understand the hidden meanings of it. Like you mentioned, Grace, I feel like they just saw a Cliff Notes version of the main villain is LGBTQ plus, and they were like, okay, let's boycott it. Instead of going into the deeper meanings of it. Wow.
Right.
But yeah, like Buffalo Bill is very interesting to me.
He is. And I think it's interesting how he has to refer to Catherine as it, like in that very famous, it rubs the lotion on its skin. Like, he has to try so much harder than Hannibal does to dehumanize his victims. And it's like, I feel like with the exception of Clarice, people aren't human to Hannibal. Just like by default, like he's just walking around and he's like, these are snacks. That's not, you know what I mean?
That's probably it. But he also uses tactics unlike Hannibal to actually intimidate. Like I mentioned earlier, Hannibal doesn't yell. You know what I mean? Hannibal gets into your mind and mentally intimidates you. You know what I mean? What Buffalo Bill does, he tries to do a little bit more physical activity to intimidate you. Like when he kidnaps Catherine, he beats her and kidnaps her. You know what I mean? It's a lot more that Buffalo Bill has to do for him to look intimidating, you know, because if you put Hannibal Lecter and Buffalo Bill side to side, I guarantee you nobody's really going to find Buffalo Bill intimidating. Well, some things that he does, you might say, oh my God, this dude is even crazier than Hannibal Lecter. But and real quick, just in a little bit more detail, even though we've talked about this guy for the whole podcast, Sir Anthony Hopkins. Amazing. Now, one of the things that he said was he saw Hannibal Lecter very similar to HAL 9000 from Stanley Kubrick's incredible 2001 A Space Odyssey.
Yes, I did read that too.
Awesome. Very highly complex, highly intelligent, easily the smartest mind in this movie. And he's very logical when it comes to his killing. You know what I mean? The shot where I believe it was a pin or something, the camera zooms in on that pin, zooms in on his face. It uses this thing called the Kuleshov Effect, where you see where the camera shows a subject, then it shows like an object, and we're thinking, okay, let's say for example, the camera shows me, right, and then shows my cell phone. It's like, okay, Jordan is making a call. Or shows me again and shows a knife. Oh, Jordan is cutting an apple, basically.
Yeah.
Stuff like that. That was really cool. And the fact that he hid it in his mouth and stuff and hid it behind his like hand, which that's another thing. When he put it behind his hands and the cops are behind him, I'm like, Y'all don't see that? Like,
I know. No, he's it, and it's almost like they underestimate him.
right, because he's
Like,
an old man, basically.
mm-hmm. Well, and they're kind of like, you know, like they're certainly not careful enough when they're leaving him his food, considering he's a freaking cannibal and his mouth's out. But like it's I don't know. And just the way I think it's also worth mentioning the way that Dr. Chilton just condescends to Hannibal the whole time, like as if he's so much better than him. And like he's just such a dick about it that you're like, okay, dude, you're making me like a serial killer more because you're just being so like rubbing his power and his freedom in his face.
Right. Right. He tried to hit on Clarice early in the film, and then
Mm-hmm.
when he got rejected, it's like, okay, you don't even know how to act, dude.
Yup.
But yeah. And also a quick thing about Hannibal Lecter is that Sir Anthony Hopkins, he basically described his voice as a combination between Truman Capote and Katharine Hepburn, which I thought that was pretty interesting.
Mm, that's very
Pretty,
interesting.
pretty interesting. Now, let's go to the treatment of women in this film.
Yes.
Yesterday in class, you guys, we kind of talked about this a little bit. Even though
Mm-hmm.
we were all bombarded by my rant of Blair Witch. But I feel like this film, Jonathan Demme did a pretty great job at examining the sort of class struggle, I want to say, between men
Mm-hmm.
and women, as men are more in power in this film,
Yeah.
whereas women are more of the second hand, kind of below the line type of people.
Yeah.
Even, and this is not just from the FBI agency, this is also could be related to the Well, as Buffalo Bill and Precious, love Precious, goaded, as Buffalo Bill is standing up on the well and Catherine is beneath him. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Kind of shows
Yeah.
that meaning of a lot of misogynistic people, that women are beneath them, which to me is not true.
Very
Women are
much.
not beneath. Right.
Right. And even like that elevator scene that you pointed out from the beginning of the movie, like she is so much shorter than all of the
Yes.
men in the elevator. And it's like it does add to this like visual image of like women being lower. And that's
Yes.
why I love that this movie like takes that, shows it, and then turns it on its head through Clarice. I mean, she is the one who solves the whole thing. I mean, it's like Crawford says, like, we couldn't have found him without you. And
Yeah.
that's very true. She couldn't
And
have gotten through to Hannibal, or they couldn't have gotten through to Hannibal without her either. So she's so important.
yeah. And even her treatment throughout the film, because like most of the
Mm-hmm.
people are like, they're looking at Clarice like, okay, get out of
Mm-hmm.
our face. The only two people who really care about her, I would say Crawford kind of cared about her, but definitely Hannibal.
Mm-hmm.
They're the only two characters throughout this film that really care about her in that way. The
Mm-hmm.
only male characters throughout this film that really care about her. And I found that very captivating. And like I said,
Yeah.
Clarice and Dr. Lecter's relationship throughout that film, I just thought was so compelling.
It's very compelling. And it's they're the only two who not only care about her, but they respect her
Yes.
as someone in a position of authority. And that's like, because you see that Hannibal doesn't even extend that respect to all women. Like, he is so disrespectful and like nasty to the senator. And she's a
Yeah.
freaking senator. Like, she's in a
Yeah.
position of significantly higher power than Clarice. So there's just something about her, you know.
Even when the other inmates were like kind of gawking at her, like there was that one scene where she was walking out
Mhm.
and then the inmate was like masturbating and threw it at her.
So gross. Yeah.
That's
And then
an ass
Hannibal.
whooping in my opinion. you
Well, the implication is that Hannibal kills him because he did that to Clarice, and it's kind of like it's like he cares about her, like, he almost wants to
Yeah,
protect her in this really strange way, and that's why he's like, "I'm not gonna come after you either because stop it, you can't protect someone that you're going to, like, kill." And,
right.
it's interesting that she just trusts that too, like, she just knows, like, in her, like, "Yes, Hannibal is not going to hurt me."
Yes. But yeah, that whole scene, I was like, if that was me, I would say, guard, open the door, give me open this cell, give me 5 minutes. Like,
Mm,
God, that would have been an ass whooping in that whole scene. Okay, hopefully Wi-Fi does not disconnect. Can you still hear? Wow, can you still hear me?
yes, I can.
Okay, awesome. And now finally, since we basically blew through this entire podcast, let's talk about the influence of this film as well as the legacy of the movie. Now,
Yes.
wow, I almost said Blair Witch Project. Oh my
I
God.
heard that. I was like, "Oh,
Remove,
got
remove,
this."
remove Blair Witch from my memory. The Silence of the Lambs has had an incredible legacy. An incredible legacy. It
Yeah.
basically ran shop at the Oscars. It
Yeah.
won. It won Jodie Foster. In my notes, I literally said Jodie Comer again. It
No,
won
I know what
Jodie
you're talking about,
Foster.
yeah.
Yeah, it won Jodie Foster her Oscar for Best Actress.
Mhm.
Won Anthony Hopkins his Oscar for Best Actor.
Mhm.
Starting an amazing legacy that he has done. Won
Oh,
Best
yeah.
Picture. Won Jonathan
Yep.
Demme, Best Director, Best Adapted Screenplay, and yeah, the screenplay of this film. I'm just like,
Oh, yeah.
yeah, yeah, this is good.
Mhm.
And also, of course, like you mentioned, the Hannibal TV show that one of my favorite actors, Mads Mikkelsen, is in.
Mhm.
Amazing.
Yeah. You should watch that TV show if you like him. He does so good. I stopped watching after season 2, I think, because I was in physical pain from something that happens in the finale. You know how it is with shows.
Yeah,
Characters
with
die,
shows,
and I'm like, I can't watch this anymore. My character's gone.
I know my
Um,
comfort character is not here no more.
right, right.
Yeah.
But it is, and it's interesting because the I can't think of his name. The screenwriter of this movie, Ted, I
I
think
think his
his
name
name.
is, give me 1 second because I have it right here in my notes.
Ted, like
Ted
Ted.
Talent. Ted Talent.
Yes. Okay. He has said that he hasn't watched any of the sequels. He's not going to ever watch the Hannibal TV show because he really feels like he's like, I understand it's profitable and people are fascinated by the character, but he's like, I really feel like with Hannibal, less is more. Like, that's
Yeah.
what makes him so scary is that you don't know a bunch about him. And, I definitely see that. I definitely see that. But I understand the appeal to like he's just a fascinating character and there's
Yeah.
not any other character like him really.
But you know what's crazy?
Mhm.
I actually like what you said, like less is more, because
Mhm.
like when you go to all these other horror movies that spawn these massive franchises, it takes
Oh yeah,
away the mystique from that character. You know what I mean?
for
Like,
sure. Like the Freddy Krueger thing, the Wes
yeah,
Craven hated. Yeah.
right. Freddy Freddy Krueger became a joke after like
Mhm.
that first movie. Even let's even take Leatherface for example. Like that
Mhm.
final shot of Texas Chainsaw, I love so much because after it makes you wonder, okay, what happened to him? Like where
Mhm.
did he just go back to the house that they were
Mhm.
at? What happened to him? You know what I mean? Same thing with
Yeah.
Michael Myers. What happened to him?
Yeah.
Interesting. And Now, of course, as we've mentioned, this film spawned a humongous franchise. Not a humongous franchise like Nightmare on Elm Street, but it spawned a lot of sequels. Hannibal,
Yeah.
that was released in 2001. Red
Mhm.
Dragon, that Grace was talking about, released in
Mhm.
2002. And Hannibal Rising, which was released in 2007. And also the original work of this film, it was called Manhunter. I almost said Mindhunter. Manhunter, which was released in 1986. And that was actually the first ever appearance of Dr. Hannibal Lecter, not played by Anthony Hopkins. It's played by another character. And of course, you mentioned the Hannibal TV show. And a quick little thing that I liked to add, I slacked it to the class, but there is a deleted scene of the Batman that basically pays homage to this film, The Silence of the Lamb.
Yeah, which is really cool. And it fits with Batman's like whole rogues gallery. I mean,
yeah. And for the people who probably don't know what I was talking about, Matt Reeves, the director, he released a little 5-minute. It's more of a short film, but it's a 5-minute deleted scene of Batman and his interaction with the Joker, and it's in a Clarice, Hannibal Lecter style, where the Joker basically gets into Batman's head, basically. I really love that.
Yeah, and Joker, I mean, like in just those lists of like best, most iconic villains, I mean, you always see Joker, and like Hannibal is always like up there too.
Yeah.
And there's just something about these like very, very detached humans that are like so fascinating to watch.
Very fascinating.
And then I mean, this is always going to be regarded as like one of the best films ever made.
Yeah, easily one of the best.
It'll just always like withstand the test of time. Like, and that's the other thing that's nice about it is like, sure, the technology is outdated, like the telephones and everything, but like for the most part, it doesn't have like a lot of special effects or stuff that are going to like look really weird in the future. Like it ages really well.
Yeah. And honestly, this film might actually be my favorite in the class, honestly. And this is coming from someone who has seen it only one time. Like, this legit is probably my favorite. Maybe The Shining #3, The Texas Chainsaw Massacre is #2, and Silence of the Lamb, I think that's #1, honestly.
I think it's definitely one of my top movies, like of all time for sure. I love this movie. It's just like you can see how it ushered in this whole like interest in like crime and forensics and detective and stuff with like Criminal Minds, and then like Forensic Files, and there's like boatloads of true crime podcasts, and I think a lot of that can probably be attributed to this movie, because before that you just don't have a lot of stories that takes you through like the process of like catching a killer and like getting into like the brain of a serial killer.
Yeah. And folks, that concludes our final installment of our horror movie trilogy. Grace, I'm just gonna say it. It was amazing working with you on these.
Yes,
It was
like
freaking awesome.
same here.
Like
Same
literally,
here. It's been so fun.
Literally from The Haunting to The Shining to The Silence of the Lamb. It was just it was fun talking about these, man.
It was fun, and we picked really great movies. I feel like they like that had a lot of like impact and like have like a legacy on like the overall horror genre. So there's it's been fun for sure.
It's been fun, Grace.
Yes.
Thank you for joining me on this journey throughout horror
Of
cinema.
course. Of course.
And thank you guys for watching the 9th episode of 1025 in Conversation and our final installment of the horror movie trilogy. I'm Jordan Keith Walton, along with Grace Huff. We'll see y'all next time. Peace.
Peace.